Okay, this is part 6. I didn't think I'd do it, but I'm going to do it. Because you thought it was a victory lap. I mean, herb has been, this is social issues. Herb has been legalized or is about to be legalized. And, I don't smoke anymore, but, alcohol is legal too, and I can't do that one either. But the inequities of going after urban kids who sell pot and put them in jail and treat it as a form of racism, which is what it is. I mean, it's like, get the black kids so they can't vote, so that white hegemony can continue. That's really a thing, but that's off the table a lot. When Trump pardons people, he thinks that he's like doing more for the black community. And maybe he is, but he's not solving all the problems, and it's certainly not stopping the people who are wearing the torches, or taking the torches around, saying, the Jews will not replace us. So yeah, that's. So anyway, the pot thing's taking care of itself. Gay marriage is here to stay. There's a reaction to it, but it's going to lose. The use of abortion as a political issue is fast running out because the people are sensible. And it's gonna eventually be a congressional thing because Civil War, we had states' rights for slavery and for desegregation, and it didn't work. There will be a national abortion law, and it will be bipartisan. When they, because right now it's good to fundraise off of the promise of a national law, but eventually, if they're both, as they're saying, a national law, then eventually people are going to have to get together and pass one, and it's going to be bipartisan, and it's going to probably they can't stop mifepristone, which is 2/3 of all abortions. It's the late-term abortions that bother people anyway. Fetal hospice is pretty much the solution. So if, in other words, you don't go and put sodium pentothal in the child, and you don't cut the child up and expel him, and you don't even suck him out when he's got limbs, because doctors don't like doing abortions. I mean, they just don't. Not even abortion doctors like doing abortions when it's late in the term. They don't particularly like doing miscarriages either, and they certainly don't like people who are banning abortion go after them for doing normal miscarriages. This is why it's a women's health issue, because it's. If you get the heavy hand of the state going after doctors for maybe doing an abortion, you may stop them just for fear of processing miscarriages before the bleeding starts, which is going to cost women lives. Not because of abortion, but just because being pregnant is a dangerous thing. Gotta hand it to women; they do things every month that we just. Men would fall over in horror of having that happen to their bodies. It's fetal hospice means that at any stage of the pregnancy, nobody has a right to not be born. And so if a kid has Downs, instead of violently aborting it, you just let it be born right away. Or if there's a really catastrophic genetic defect that's worse than Downs, and there's a lot of those. I had a pregnancy with one of those, and it's a lot of most miscarriages are from a chromosomal defect that could kill the mother if it was allowed to continue, and the child has no. In those situations, the child has no chance of life, or a very rare chance of life. The child will maybe live a month. The Santorums had a pregnancy like that. God bless them. And they let the child be born, and they took care of it and loved it. And fetal hospice, baby hospice. Don't kill the child. Don't do anything while it's being born, but bring it in, love it, baptize it if you believe that God requires it. I really don't anymore, but some people do. But the whole God is an ogre thing, well, we'll talk about that too, I guess. But yeah, that's the solution. I mean, just fetal hospice at any time in the pregnancy, but no other form of abortion. After mifepristone. After a child can be born, it should be allowed to be born. If it can physically, be taken out and born, then it should be, it should get that chance to be born without being scrambled. I know it doesn't have a memory of that. The experience, it's got only the animalistic experience of being torn into shreds, but it's still pain. Even if it can't appreciate the pain, it's still pain. It's still negative physical stimulus. And, people don't like the fact that abortion is negative physical stimulus on another human being. Because anything after gastrulation is a human being. But the government, I guess I won't make this a full abortion video. The rights of a fetus before the law are already sacrosanct. You cannot execute a pregnant woman. The right to life is the right to not be executed without due process. Nothing else. The tort right to redress. If somebody kills the child while it's killing the mother or hurting the mother, yeah, then that's considered a death, and claims can be made, and it's a crime. But the thought that a mother can be has to defend her rights against the rights of the child, that is one step too far. She needs to have the right to have that child be born for the child's own good. You don't have children reborn because they're fine and you're just too lazy to be a parent. If it's a late-term abortion, it's happening because they don't want to put the child through that, and they don't want to have the risk of having a full pregnancy, which is more dangerous as it goes on, which puts substantial risk of hemorrhaging and all kinds of bad things happening. Birth is dangerous to have. So the earlier you can do the birth, the better, especially if the child has no chance of survival. It's like, there's no benefit to the child who's doomed biologically, who's sick, who can never be well, to extend its life in the womb and have it die there, and then it's just grisly. Just as soon as that child can be born, if it can't survive, then do it as soon as you can. And that's just common sense. I mean, God is not an ogre. God will not punish you for that. God doesn't punish you for anything. God is perfectly fine with its own existence, his existence, her existence. If you believe Shekinah is the Holy Spirit, is the feminine part of God, or the feminine identification of God in Judaism. If you God is not an ogre. You cannot make God unhappy about anything, including your conduct. So, if people are mad about things, it's not because God's mad. It's because people, generally like to be mad at each other. That's called original sin. If you are mad at somebody else's conduct, then you are taking the ability of God to judge people and giving it to yourself. And that is the original sin. It's blame. And if we stop doing it, taking that little bit of free will where we are allowed to hate the morals of other people, we would be a better society. And it means, we leave people alone about drugs and sex and rock and roll, and, unless they're blowing down your walls with their music. I have actually, been the one to have parties, and later in life I've called the cops because somebody is like playing their guitar on their and keeping me awake on their porch. So yeah, but it's we need to make the world good for people. Very humanistic, because God's a humanist. Come to me and you shall find rest. My yoke is easy. My burden is, I'm gentle and humble of heart. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. That's the Gospel of Matthew. It means God is not an ogre. That means Jesus and Bill W. and Spinoza all agree that God is not an ogre, and the world is according to God's plan, and you should not hold people's difficulties against them, because that's the original sin. It wasn't sex. It wasn't some one act that had a catastrophic influence on everybody else. It's that act that all of us do when we blame other people for their own problems. That's original sin. We judge people. And if we stop doing that and found a way to make people's lives better, including letting them end their pregnancy with dignity through fetal hospice and then love the child until it has its natural death. It's called natural death. When a child is born in an abortion or whatever, and you let the child die, if you let any human die without intubating it, that's called a natural death. It's not, it's not immoral to let somebody die without all the tubes and stuff. It's just the most moral thing is to let God take somebody gently, because dying is actually, if you listen to hospice nurses, dying's a gentle process. I mean, it's a natural thing. We all do it. You don't get out of this thing alive. So, letting little babies die if they have no hope of living, it's the compromise that will have to be made. Nothing else works. You can't just ban it at 13 weeks, because most late-term abortions are after 13 weeks. The ones that we worry about, the ones that they argue about. Fetal hospice is the only way out of that problem. So, a child be born, cradle it, love it, baptize it. If you think God requires that, I don't, because miscarried children go to heaven too. They don't go to limbo. Limbo's not a thing. A God that needs us to validate his perfection is not a thing. We need to love each other. Treat each other like we need to see people and see God in other people and be God to them in doing good works. And then we have heaven on earth inside, not even as a social thing, just as a spiritual thing. That's the way it works. That's heaven. So, and that's way more than a presidential. I don't know if a presidential candidate said that, they'd probably be controversial, but eventually they're going to have to. Politicians are going to have to say God's not an ogre, and that's my politics, and that's my social policy. And then people hating other people, saying they're evil on the other side. That's egalitarians do that, the left and the right. We quit othering people, then things take care of themselves. And then maybe we don't have to be warp capable to be part of a galactic civilization if you really want to be nerded out by philosophy and all that other stuff. So it ain't warp power, people. It's people power. So just ask the NDE people. Anyway, so that takes care of social policy. Be mellow, be chill, because God is. God said God is. Jesus said, I'm chill and humble of heart. Spinoza said God's doing that. Bill W. says that. Sounds good to me. So it should sound good to you too. So, how are you going to explain to God that you think he's an ogre? Figure that one out, because you're going to have to if you think God's an ogre. God will know you think that. So you try to face him that way with that thought. Good luck with that. Happy Election Day.